we're seeing really promising signal that MCG is able to identify high-risk coronary disease when other conventional metrics have not been able to.
Welcome everyone, I'm Yee Au-Yeung. I'm the General Manager of AQMed here at SandboxAQ. Today I'm sitting down with Dr. Mohamad Alkhouli. He's an interventional cardiologist, Vice Chair for Strategic Partnership at Cardiovascular Medicine Department at the Mayo Clinic, and he's also our Chair of our Scientific Advisory Board here at AQMed. I think, Mohamad, you have a very unique job. Not only that you're a practicing physician, but you're also actively shaping where medical innovation goes next for the Mayo Clinic. So I think our discussion will focus on MCG, or Magnetocardiography, which is one of these innovations that you care deeply about. For those who are not familiar, MCG measures the magnetic signals produced by the heart's electrical currents. And because magnetic fields passes through the body unimpeded, it gives us a richer, purer signal than EKG. And this is what my team at AQMed focuses on as well. So let's dig in. Mohamad, tell me a little bit about what attracted you to MCG to begin with. What problems were you trying to solve?
Thank you, Kate. It's a pleasure to talk with you today. You know, many people focus on an unmet need. They identify a problem in their practice and they start looking for a solution, right? And I think that's a very sensible approach to medtech, but it shouldn't really be the only approach. Many consequential breakthroughs in medicine and began not just as a defined need, but actually a technology that was in a search for the highest value problem. And maybe I can illustrate that with an example. You may be familiar with the metal called Nitinol, and that is now essentially in almost every device that we put in the heart. It's in stents, it's in valves, it's in mapping catheters, it's all over the place, right? And why that became very consequential is this metal acts like a muscle. So as it's compressed for delivery, it springs back to its programmed shape under body temperature. So it has so many potential uses in our field, right? But when it started, it wasn't like that. It was a technology looking for the highest value. And I would say that was my route to MCG. I wasn't really looking to solve a specific medical problem. I just came across some of the work of the early pioneers of the technology and was fascinated by the whole field of biomagnetism and specifically MCG. And then I started really digging deeper into the science, but in parallel also looking wildly about what problems can we solve with that technology. So I do think MCG represents exactly that kind of moment where there's a technology that time has become really mature and it's waiting to be matched to the magnitude of the problems that it can address.
I think this is a very interesting framing. Technology in search of its highest value problem is what you're conveying here. It's almost like flip the script of even like my own training from Stanford Biodesign, which is like always identify the unmet clinical need and use it as a DNA in your development journey. So let's dig into a little bit deeper then. Since MCG is not new, similar to the Nitinol stories, is also, invented in the 1960s, right? So the obvious questions that one would ask is like, well, why now? What has changed? And why do you think now is the moment that it becomes clinically applicable?
Yeah, it's a great question. As you know, the core historical barrier was the sensor technology. So traditional MCGs, while they produce, beautiful images and signals, but they required squid sensors. And so those who are not familiar, squid stands for superconducting quantum interference devices. And those devices required liquid helium cooling to near absolute zero temperature, which meant a massive, immobile, extraordinary, expensive machines, right? So, and they had to be magnetically shielded as well. So they required special rooms. So this was clinically impractical and economically not feasible. So it stayed in the purview of research labs for many years and sort of like impeded the progress. We have seen now an array of different sensor technologies that have evolved over the last 2 decades. I would say some of them started with lower quality, but they have improved the quality significantly, and brand new sensors have emerged. So I would say the main difference is that the core technology has changed and evolved over time to be more practical, but at the same time working to match the precision that the squid machines have allowed us to have earlier. Maybe the second element would be AI. Computational power AI was really not there back then, right? So MCG is able to give you an extraordinarily rich spatiotemporal signals and data sets. So you need to be able to analyze those beyond the conventional means. And I think AI and the computational power that we have now will allow us to really not have any analytical bottleneck once the technology is in the hands of clinicians.
So hardware maturity combined with advancement in AI presents itself as a real convergence moment for magnetocardiography. So if we bring in the clinical piece into it, and let's get a little bit more specific, where do you see MCG can be making the biggest difference for patients?
Yeah. So remember when we talked that I was thinking about the different pathways where I should test this technology. Let's say I have a device, and I now have a couple, fortunately. Where would I deploy it in which kind of research studies? So the way I'm thinking about it is in three broad avenues, although not limited to, just to a starting point. So we have the ischemic applications. Identification of ischemic tissue or high-risk coronary artery disease is one. Another avenue would be in patients who have heart failure, and we started with infiltrative cardiomyopathy because there's some track records about that kind of research in amyloidosis specifically. But cardiomyopathies in general would be another fair game or testing ground for MCG. And the third one is in heart rhythm mapping. So non-invasive mapping of different arrhythmias will be another, potentially fertile field for research.
Thank you. And I wonder if you may, Dr. Alkhouli, expand a little bit on the ischemia or even the cardiomyopathy or amyloidosis use case a little bit for the audience who's not familiar, who's not a clinician, right? So when using MCG to solve these two conditions, like what are you looking to advance? Is it quality of care, earlier diagnosis, saving costs? Can you dissect it a little bit more?
Yeah, definitely. So all of the above. In terms of ischemia in particular, we have a problem with detection. We have a problem of under and over diagnosis in some cases. We use a technology that's been around for over 100 years now, electrocardiography, ECG. And while it's great, it does miss quite a bit of patients who may have an occluded artery and they're coming acutely to the emergency room, but their ECG is non-diagnostic or it doesn't really show an occluded artery or signs of occlusion. In other cases, we've had patients who have ECG signal that looks like a ST elevation MI, which is a full-blown MI, like the highest risk form of MI. And when we take them to the cath lab, we find that their arteries are completely open. So there are some areas that ECG is not good at, and it just is a functionality of physics. ECG has certain strengths and limitations, and MCG has certain strengths and limitations, and I think the capabilities are complementary. And if we combine the signal of both, we will probably have less missed diagnosis. The clinical study that we're doing currently in that area has to do with the identification of high-risk coronary artery disease. Patient coming into the cath lab, they have, or to the emergency room, they have chest pain, and they have done the conventional testing and they're going to the cath lab. We have that opportunity to do scans on them and then compare the scan to the data that we get from the angiogram. And then we're seeing really promising signal that MCG is able to identify high-risk coronary disease when other conventional metrics have not been able to. So that's a very exciting area. And you also probably know that we wanted to take it from really the basic science to the translational bed as well. So we did animal studies where we occluded different vessels and we recorded the signal of MCG. and we learned a ton there, and we may be able to do full mapping and predict even which artery is at play, which currently we can't really do with ECG, right? So that these are all the exciting development in the ischemia realm. We also started a study on amyloidosis, building on prior literature that tells us you can identify amyloidosis with fairly good precision using MCG, but you could also track treatment, because in the past we didn't have good treatments for amyloidosis. Now we have good drugs for selected phenotypes of amyloidosis, but that they require really hefty follow-up and repeated expensive imaging. And MCG, we hypothesized that MCG can bridge that gap, and you could do it at the point of care and have even more scans and track the treatment more closely. So that study is ongoing now, and we hope to have some results in next year or so.
Yeah, thank you for that explanation. I think you paint a picture of a pretty wide landscape of where MCG could go, and we're not talking about marginal improvement here. Like, we're really talking about areas where clinicians are currently, hitting the wall with the existing tools, and MCG could fill a gap here. My prior role was a product manager at Google X, so we always have a responsibility to, get these moonshots and make real contact with the real world. So perhaps can you say a little bit more about what have you found so far in your research in the real world?
Yeah, so the two elements I alluded to was that we're able to identify high-risk coronary disease, so when conventional metrics failed. And one other thing that I didn't mention was we actually were able also to do the opposite. So there's a subset of acute coronary syndrome called or caused by Takotsubo cardiomyopathy, or stress-induced cardiomyopathy, where the heart, parts of the heart will become stunned, so they don't contract as much. And the ECG signal mimics, a heart attack or ST elevation MI, while in reality is just a stunned myocardium. The arteries are okay. And we've published a series of cases where MCG was able to tell us using different biomarkers, MCG biomarkers, that this heart is not ischemic. But we still had to do the routine care, take them to the cath lab, and that's when we found that they actually don't have ischemia. On the amyloidosis, it is a little bit early, but prior data has suggested that you might be able to detect improvement after you initiate the drugs before the echo and other imaging modalities are able to do that. And MCG is, maybe for the benefit of the listeners too, MCG does not really produce any energy. It's a passive sensor, right? So you're not getting X-ray, you're not getting emission of any kind of energy. Essentially, it's just sensing your heart magnetic signal. So that's an additional advantage, that you don't have to go through more radiation or more extensive imaging, and you can have that as a point of care.
Thank you for sharing some of the preliminary findings of our collaboration together. And, with the pivotal study that is on the horizon for us, it's a real momentum that we're building here. But you and I both know that to get a technology from research into standard of care is not just a matter of solving a science problem, right? So it really takes an ecosystem to become a part of the clinical care. So I want to close on that. In your opinion, what will it take to unlock MCG's full potential?
I want to go back to my Nitinol example. That technology was there in 1959, but it stayed around for 20 some years before any of its benefits were realized, right? And it wasn't that because the potential was not there, but because the infrastructure, the enabling infrastructure, wasn't yet ready, right? So if you use, it was kind of interesting that MCG has the same date of birth almost to Nitinol. But when you actually use this example, when the infrastructure became ready, the enabling tools became ready, Nitinol ended up inside hundreds of millions of patients now, right? So I really think that MCG has the same biography. So the physics are largely solved, the computing power and AI are largely solved or being solved. The clinical need has never been greater, right? So we just need champions to put all of this together, both on the industry side and on the clinical side. So this is a call for anybody who's interested in really bringing this technology to achieve its full potential. This is a call to connect with people who are in the field. It's currently a small field, right? There's few people who care deeply about MCG, both on the clinical side and on the industry. So if you hear this and you're interested in being part of unlocking that potential, we'll be happy to talk to you anytime.
Champions on both sides, medicine and industry. I think that message is loud and clear, and I think that's exactly right. And honestly, Mohamad, I think the fact that you are one of the clinical champions that we have the honor to work with as we develop this technology is what keeps me so optimistic about this project. It is truly a technology that has been waiting for its moment, and I genuinely think that we're in it. Any last comments or last words that you want to share with us before we close?
The future is magnetic. I'm very optimistic.
The future is magnetic. Great. Thank you for the time and also for the candor and for everything that you do to push this technology forward. This has been a great conversation.
Thank you, Kit.